Number 3 on our list this week, and it's a little bit sad, but clearly COVID has made things difficult in terms of dealing with financial providers, dealing with banks and building societies. And the consumer group, which have commissioned some research, they've spoken to, I think, about 1,600 people about this to uncover their experience of going through probate. So when a family member dies and you have to register that with the bank or building society or insurance company or investment provider and close the account, this process of probate. And they uncovered some very lengthy delays in the process and also some horrendous administrative errors taking place. So, for example, they found 17% of people who had started this process of closing a loved one's bank account because they died, and they'd started before last March, so before the lockdown started, and completed it, I think, before last March as well. 17% found it took longer than 3 months. And then that rose to 37% where they started pre-lockdown and it continued into the lockdown. Have you had any experience of dealing with banks, building societies, insurance companies, anyone during the lockdown period? Or not had that?
Thank God, no. No,
okay.
Fortunately not. And I don't envy anybody that does, or has had to at any point. I imagine what's happened here, and I'm not defending them because this is very heartbreaking for people that are involved, and the administrative errors as well. They include losing death certificates, which if you're dealing with a loved one's death, you have enough on your plate without having to sort that out too. But I imagine what's happened is that particularly lockdown 1, these were things that would have either been done in person, or there would have been a whole office going on somewhere behind the scenes of a bank that you deal with. And they would have had to change their working patterns. And from what I hear, this is a problem in all sorts of areas across banking, and because they just weren't used to operating in that way. So it's very unfortunate. I hope that by this time, we're now basically a year on since the good old days of lockdown 1. And I hope that these issues have resolved themselves and it was a teething problem. But some banks actually managed to get it right. Who did well? Office or Post Office Money, Nationwide and Santander had very high levels of satisfaction. And Barclays and HSBC were named as the banks with the lowest satisfaction levels. So it's interesting that this was a problem for some and not others. Have you had any problems? Because I just don't deal with any of this.
No, when I discovered at the start of the first lockdown that I could pay checks in. I don't get checks very often, but I had a refund because I switched energy providers and they sent me a account balance via check. And I discovered I could pay checks in by taking a photo with my online banking app and not having to actually visit a bank, so that was quite convenient. I spoke a couple of weeks back to my car insurance company because somebody kindly reversed into my car door just before Christmas, so I was dealing with that. And actually, I have to say, I could tell the operator was working from home, so I could sort of hear the background noise, the kids in the background and stuff, but they dealt with it very well. And I think they have got their act together. I think you're quite right that in that first lockdown, when it was such a sudden transition from working in offices to working remotely, I can understand why there were delays, why there were errors being made, why stuff was getting lost between different people. But yeah, really now there's no excuse. People they've had time to get their act together to put in place, call routines, put in place scanning documents and sharing files and allocating tasks and things. But yeah, it's heartbreaking for somebody and obviously a lot more people have been through that bereavement in the last 12 months because of COVID. We've lost a lot more people than in a normal year. And the last thing you want, I think, when someone dies in your family is to then go through that process of, we've lost your death certificate and you have to reapply and start the process again. Can't imagine how heartbreaking that would be.
Yeah, I think a lot of these administrative tasks as well, they're the sort of things that people really kind of go to pieces over, because it's obvious, always heartbreaking to lose a loved one, always. I think in some circumstances, maybe you see it coming. That's probably not the case with COVID. But if somebody's suffering with cancer or something a bit more long term, and you can see that things are going that way. And I think often actually one of the things that hits people really hard is having to do this administrative stuff, because you're mentally so exhausted by that point, by the upset of everything, by everything that has to go into a death, organizing a funeral, all that sort of thing that has to happen. I think this can sometimes, in a way, be the straw that kind of breaks the camel's back. And it's just that additional horrible set of things that you have to deal with that should be straightforward but often aren't. And it's very sad to think that people that are already just done, they're over it. I'm sure if a lot of people could employ another person just to do it for them, I think they would, because it's not something that everyone hates doing admin. Everyone hates banking admin. But to do banking admin of somebody that you love and that you're missing terribly, and then to here, whoops, the death certificate's gone. I mean, I assume you can replace a death certificate, but that adds another to an already very fatigued person that's having to go through this.
And of course, people want closure too. So if this is taking longer than 3 months, it's reminding you on a regular basis that that person is gone and is no longer with you. And it's actually, to get it done quickly would be far preferable to drag it out for a period of months after their funeral, after you've sort of said the final goodbye to them. The other bit that I found quite interesting in this research was the inconsistency. So some banks didn't require probate to release relatively small amounts of money to deal with emergency expenditure, things like funeral costs, inheritance tax payments in some cases. But some were willing to make those payments up to £5,000 and others up to £50,000. And you'd think there'd be like an industry banking standard to say, in the event of a death, as long as you can prove that you're responsible for administering the will, etc., you can release up to the following amount or a proportion of the bank account. But they seem to be making up their own rules.
Obviously that's not good, and it does seem backwards that there's not a standard. But it's also not the sort of thing I think that anybody would consider when opening a bank account, which kind of makes it even more frustrating, because maybe if you're an older person or something like that, this is the sort of thing that would kind of maybe come to mind more than if you're a younger person opening a bank account. But actually, I'm sure the hindsight is that you would want to work with a bank that did allow you to access a reasonable amount of money quite quickly, so that you didn't find yourself in this situation, particularly if you have less money and you have to pay for a funeral or something like that. So it is odd that there's not banking standards, and it's odd that we're only really realizing this now, and it's not kind of more widely talked about as a why you might go with a bank. Because you choose your banks because maybe you like technology, or maybe there's a nice little offer that you get £100 to open up a bank account or something like that. But actually, I think a lot of people would rather have peace of mind than the extra £100.
Yeah, I once got an inflatable armchair for opening the bank account when I was back at uni. That was their sort of incentive to I don't think it lasted very long, but I guess the other thing here is, and we talk all the time to people about making a will and getting a lasting power of attorney, but actually maybe it is right to think about these more administrative things, particularly in later retirement, and making life as simple as possible for your loved ones, once you're gone, so they're not having to, run around to hundreds of different providers. You really simplify it, you bring it down to one bank account, one investment provider, etc., and make sure all the information's to hand as well, so we're not having to hunt through drawers and filing cabinets and carrier bags full of statements, but you have a concise list. It's what we do, a little sales pitch here, but it's what we do as financial planners. So when a client of ours dies, the family members know they can come to us, we can press a button and give them a concise summary of everything, and then we can handle the process on their behalf. So you remove that stress from it. But it's it's not good to see that research, and it's a shame that banks don't realize that they have a very important role at that time, that very stressful time in people's lives, when they should be making it easier for people, not harder.
It's a classic we don't like thinking about death thing, isn't it? And I think maybe banks not play on that again. Whenever I say these things, it's not that I think there's some enormous conspiracy and that everyone's deliberately trying to make everyone's lives as hard as possible. But it is that people don't like to think about death, and so maybe that's being exploited a little bit. And actually, maybe as an industry, there does need to be a way of simplifying this entire process, so that, like you said, it is just kind of in one place and it's straightforward. But until they're asked to do it or they're forced to do it, they're probably not going to do it, unfortunately.
No, absolutely. Hannah, thank you for joining us again for Talking Money. We'll see you again next week. Show notes, as always, you can find at icradio.co.uk. If you're watching us on YouTube, please do press like and subscribe, and leave us a comment as well. We always love to read your comments. And if you're listening to us via a podcast app, it'd be great to get a star rating and review from you. So just tap on your podcast artwork, leave your star rating that way as well. Until next time, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.